Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another tip review, and today for you I have this very sparkly box here of Tangzu Tang Narrow outlet. Yes, after I checked out the Tangzu Tang wide outlet and the normal Tangzu Tang, today we are checking out the Tangzu Tang Narrow outlet. And yeah, that's how it comes here. You open this like that, you pull out the plastic and you get 3 tips here. This is size S, but there's also M and L. S here is 9.5 millimeters. Let me quickly get the tip a bit closer. 9.5 millimeters at the front here, and then 13.4 at the back. M, of course, uses the same geometry here, but M is 10 millimeters at the front, 14.4 at the back, and L is 11 millimeters at the front and 15.4 at the back. That's a bit disappointing in terms of sizing here. I definitively think there should be SS, there should be SM, ML, and probably also an XL option. And with the price of $12 for 3 pairs, that means it's like $4 per pair, makes it cheap on the bottom third of pricing overall. But I still wish there would be more size options here, similar to the normal Tangzu Tang. And then, yeah, that brings us already to comfort here. And as my title says, this is probably the hardest tip money can buy. It's really hard at the front. Let me try to squish it for you. Like, really, I have to apply force in order to squish it. Like, it's really hard, and really, this can be a really big problem for you. Because that combined with the lack of sizing means you need basically to find the right size that is just a tad smaller than your ear canal. And then this thing here at the back will do the sealing. This here doesn't seal at all. This will basically just sit in your ear canal like freely and not do anything. And the back does the sealing part. And that means it's really odd in terms of comfort. And this tip actually will, in the future, whenever I think it's needed, or maybe I put it in all reviews, I haven't decided yet, I will give you a standard deviation box plot or whisker plot, depending on how you want to call it. And it's already shown in the background here. And just as a quick refresher, if you don't know how to read this, so the middle line in the box here, this is the median. This means this is the point where I assume most people will land in the comfortable scale. And yeah, this one here ranges from very comfortable at the top to okay comfortable middle to very uncomfortable at the bottom. And yeah, the box around this median basically shows where the majority of people will land around this. And here in this one, my best guess is majority of people will be below comfortable and a few people above that. And then the thin lines, so-called whiskers here, those are the outliers. This is what I assume people would or could potentially land on, but very rarely. And yeah, with this one, you can easily see, I assume the deviation goes to way below to very uncomfortable here, and just a bit to the medium, decent, comfortable range here. And yeah, I think I will throw on this in the future for all tips, because it's a helpful tool for you to see how likely it is a tip will fit you or not. Because this thing, it's so odd, like even in the time I used it, the comfort is really weird. On, for instance, the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro here, easy to see. This thing actually is relatively comfortable to me. It does insert all of the way into my ear canal, and this thing at the back does for isolation here. And it is actually comfortable. It doesn't press me much in my ear canal. It's totally fine. It's not the most comfortable, but it's okay. However, if you go for longer nozzle IEMs or like even medium nozzle IEMs, well, things get a bit more complicated here. Because the material in the front is so hard, it absolutely causes pressure hotspots in my ear and gets uncomfortable pretty fast. So I really didn't like that. But even in these cases, because it's so hard, it usually presses itself out of your ear to a point where it's no longer that uncomfortable. And the problem with that is when this big mantle in the end might then not seal, and that we talk about noise isolation later. So I would say the overall variety of this fitting in your ear is very high. It can lead from comfortable on something with a really short nozzle to absolutely catastrophic with something with a long nozzle. And the texturing, again, I didn't notice in my ear neither positive or negative in terms of comfort. And yeah, noise isolation, I will probably use a similar variety graph here to just show you how likely it is that it will isolate well or not. Because this suffers from the same problems. This silicone at the front here is pretty damn thick. And that means if you get this inner mantle to insert in your ear most of the way, and just the tiny bit of the back here is basically sealing the tip, your isolation can be pretty damn good, and it's one of the best isolating silicone tips then. But chances are you're not getting this optimum case. And if you don't get this optimum case, it's alright. It's like average to a tiny bit better than average, and that means I would still take foam tips over this in every day of the week. And yeah, again, variety here is very high. It can reach from really good to really bad, because the problem with this big mantle at the back is, well, it's pretty damn big even on S, and that means if you have a generally small ear canal, I just don't think you will get this to seal you at all. And that means you will lose space, and yeah, isolation will also not be good. Especially because you have a back mantle here is really thin, as you can see. And yeah, again, this is what I want to stress, high variety in terms of isolation. And on my artificial scale, best case it would be like an 8 if you really get it to see well. More realistic case would probably be more like a 6 or 6.5, because yeah, it's just so odd in terms of how it fits your ear. And when we come to shaping sound, again, subjective first. Just me purely how I hear it, and not judging by measurements. This is just me subjectively telling you. And yeah, as you can see, this is narrow outlet, and narrow outlet from the finally had the experience tightens up bass. And after listening to a few IMs with this, yeah, I also think the narrow nature of this helps to tighten up bass a bit. It increases impact, increases punch a bit, and yeah, it reminds me in that regard a bit of the final E. However, I also have the feeling then that this does reduce soundstage a bit. Not a lot, and I assume it could be again due to reduced treble, but if it is reduced, it is not reduced a lot to my ear here. Although I would argue if it is reduced, probably in the mid to upper treble transition here, because yeah, that is usually responsible also for the feeling of soundstage, at least partly. And yeah, that means it does sound like more narrow bore ear tips to my ear. And that brings me now to yeah, objective measurements here. And yeah, these are done in my IC 711 coupler with the fake pinna and without fake pinna. I usually do both, just to be sure I know what's happening, just to be sure like I have an approximate feeling how it just is in the coupler and how it is in your ear. But let me again stress, this tip is also weird for the coupler. Like getting this to insert well is very tricky because it always pushes itself out. If you insert it too much, it just, or if you insert it basically so that it seals with S, well, this thing is a bit too deep here, and then it just plops itself out. And that also, of course, leads to an artifacts when measuring, and it's really difficult to insert this well. In the fake pinna it was a bit easier, but still not so easy. And so the measurements here are done to my best of knowledge and to my best of ability, but I can't guarantee that they are as accurate as they are with other tips, because it's just odd overall of a tip again. But yeah, let's start with the AJ07M here. And yeah, strangely enough, as you can see by a graph, this reduces bass a bit, and it seems to boost treble. I mean, especially compared to my reference strips, lower treble at like 2.5K with the AJ07M without the pinna, noticeably increased. It's like, I think 2 decibels or 1 decibels, well, more like 1 decibel, but like noticeably increased over the other measurements here. And yeah, also check out the peak at 9K with the AJ07M. Well, that gets pushed to like 7.5K with this tip. Very interesting stuff happening. Then also very interesting in the upper treble transition here. Well, the peak that is usually past 10K gets pushed to like 10K, and everything after that without the pinna is just cut off. It's like it's almost completely gone. And yeah, when we go from here to the one with pinna, yeah, you can see here it looks a bit better. The bass is not reduced, and I assume, again, the reduced bass previously is probably just due to me not inserting this as well, or it may be pushing itself out. But similar trend, lower treble is actually boosted compared to my reference tips, and then there isn't this weird stepstone in between at like 4 kHz, really strongly pronounced with this narrow bore tip. And then again, the tip that here is usually at like 8K with the, yeah, with my other tips here in this measurement, again gets pushed down to 7K. And that means, what I will really conclude here, Quintet will show similar behavior. If you have a peak at 8K and you want to push it down to 7K, well, this is an option. This will give you this push most likely. But again, what we can see here, the peak at 10K also gets pushed down and reduced. It's now at like 9.5K. And after that, again, treble is completely cut off in the measurements. To my ear, it's not as bad as the graph shows it. Like, again, I'm pretty sure it's happening because I measured it. And I also said before, mid to upper treble transition sounds like it's reduced. But the graph here is a bit over-exaggerating to my ear. And that brings me to Quintet, again without pinna. And dang, what is happening here? Yes, I did measure this twice without pinna, but the measurement looked exactly the same. And you can see again, lower treble is boosted over all other tips that I've measured so far. Specifically with Quintet, check out the boost at the 4.5K region. Whoa, that is a big peak now. And honestly, this is also audible to me and I didn't like it at all. So this made Quintet an IEM I don't like with this tip. And then again, the peak after that here at like 7.5K gets pushed lower to like 7K here. Again, very interesting stuff happening. And then after that, the peak with the Quintet at like of a plateau between like 9 and 12K. Well, check it out here. It again gets pushed down a bit in frequency. And after that, you can see again, it is reduced. And yeah, let's go to the Quintet with pinna now. Yep, not as badly pronounced as the Quintet without pinna, but you can still see the 4.5K peak is boosted over other tips that I've measured here. The Tangzu Tang Sancai Normal, for instance, noticeably less pronounced here. And then again, we can see that everything after 10K seems to be slightly reduced in the one with pinna, but not a lot. And yeah, that means here I would conclude with this tip after these measurements, but it is likely this tip can boost lower treble a bit for you. And it's also likely that it will push down an 8 or 9K peak in frequency to like 7K. And everything around or past 10K can be potentially dampened with this tip. And that means it's a very odd tip overall to boost lower treble and / upper mids, but dampen upper treble. Don't think I've ever seen a tip that does similar things. Yeah, and it brings me to additional factors here. And so first cleaning, this is similar to the normal Tangzu Tang tip here. It's the same texture. Material is really smooth and you really just can wipe it off with your finger or with a cloth. But water should be fine, alcohol should be fine. So really cleaning very easily. Longevity wise, I'm a bit torn this one. So first, the silicone on the front here is really thick, as you can see, so that will not be the issue. But the problem is the silicone at the back. It's super thin and I'm not sure how long that will last. So it's one of those things. Maybe if you actually get this to fit just right, I think you will be okay in terms of longevity. But if you are just a bit too small, I think this probably will reduce a bit, deteriorate a bit quicker. And I'm just not sure which one might be happening in real life. So again, longevity wise, it really depends with this one. And I don't want to really tell you it might last less or it might be good. Yeah, it's just a very odd tip again. And yeah, then coming to the conclusion, the Tangzu Tang Sancai white bore was odd. It's one of the oddest tips I've ever tried. And Tangzu Tang Sancai narrow bore here continues this really odd trend. This tip, as I said before, is the hardest tip I've ever had in my hands. It's really hard here. And then the double mantle that they use here, or the double flange, doesn't really work that well here, because this is a huge mantle. And also the lack of sizing means, well, it will be a bit tricky to get this for the size you actually need it to. Adding to this is also the weird character that it does with the sound, boosting lower treble / upper mids, and then dampening probably upper treble. Not sure if you would want that in most of the cases. And then also combining with that it will probably shift the 9K / 8K peak a bit lower. I'm also not sure how much you want this. And that means overall, this is a really odd tip again, and I can not recommend this. The normal Tangzu Tang Sancai I can see you getting. This is a pretty damn decent tip, and I still use it from time to time today. Just not bad at all. But this one here, like the white bore, is really strange, and I cannot recommend it. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, recommendations, or criticisms, please leave a comment. Donspektor out.